Welcome back, Honors. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to your flip classroom and our continuing discussion of the ancient empires, right? So the big thing that we're actually doing right now is I'm just introducing this flip because we're actually going to clip in about 2 seconds a flip that I recorded last year where we talked about the Assyrians and the Persians. The reason why I'm reusing it is because it's really good. Like it's really good. It gets all the information home across really, really well. And actually, I broke it up into 2 different flips. Like half of it's recorded in my classroom, and then a little bit of it's recorded on my couch. But we end up actually covering enough stuff to where I think that we don't need another flip going into your test, so you can just focus on studying and getting ready for your test, which is a huge, huge thing. But I do want to go ahead and do a little bit of a intro and just go ahead and shout you guys out. Y'all are doing great. Y'all are absolutely crushing stuff. Ellerbush, Fairchild, all y'all are really, really impressing me. Caroline, I don't care what Ava says about you. You're awesome. Y'all are doing great. Keep up the good work, right? Talk as much as you can in class. Actually get after it a little bit. Make jokes, laugh a little bit. That stuff is the essence of learning on a large scale. So keep up the great work. Keep crushing it. And I'll see y'all soon. And also, look out for this little guy. Come here, PB. Come here, buddy. Because in the flip that I recorded last year, he's in the end of it as well. But he's only a year old, and now he's 2. Come here, buddy. Here. You don't want to say hello? Oh, fine. I'll just bring the video to you. All right, so, yeah. But anyway, keep a, look out for this little dude because he's actually in the flip, but he's very little and stuff like that when we recorded it last year. But anyway, Pierre, can you go ahead and say bye? Can you say bye? Okay, good boy. But I'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one. Pressing area, but let's go ahead and hit it and just understand Haley Ruther, so you know how anybody else that's color coding their notes, so you know these are 2 different groups of people and there are 2 different sections of them on your study guide, right? So let's first talk about the Assyrians, right? The Assyrians are going to be coming from the northern region of the Mesopotamia Fertile Crescent area, and they were actually located in that region right next to the Tigris River. They're actually located in what is now considered modern day Syria, right? Get it? Assyria, Syrians, right? So Syria. So the big thing about it though is their main area was actually known as Nineveh, that one, all right? Nineveh, that's their actual main city-state that it began, and then they would expand into becoming the Assyrian Empire, right? Ashur became another one of their large settlements and things like that, and they were settled very, very close to the Tigris River, right? And at its height, Assyria is going to expand and cover most of the Fertile Crescent, and they're going to take over areas of Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Israel, and even modern-day Egypt. That's right, by 650 BC, following the 3rd intermediate period of Egyptian history, when the Hittites begin to fall, the Assyrians are going to come in, and they're going to actually take over what was left of the Egyptian Empire, right? And the big reason why is going to be due to the fact that they're going to become masters in ironworking and a lot of other stuff, and a lot of it as well has to do with their geography and the fact that Assyrians lived in a land that was very resource plentiful, right? Really contributed to the growth of their very fast-moving empire and things like that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there that I don't think that they were making the best decisions with all these resources and stuff like that because they become very, very big jerks. Assyrians are not nice. They were not nice. They are not nice because they're all dead. But Assyrians in the past were not very nice people and stuff like that. But as you can see, they expanded over this entire area, invaded and took over what was Babylon, right? So when Hammurabi creates Babylon, the Assyrians are the ones that came in, took over Babylon, and then when Nebuchadnezzar led his actual invasions, he pushed the Assyrians out, right? And then also, as you can see right here, takes over Palestine and modern-day Jerusalem. So they also took over the Hebrews at one point. And when the Assyrians took over the Hebrews, they deported them and moved them out of their homeland, and this caused the very first diaspora of the Jews, of the Hebrews, of the people of Israel, right? So as you can see, the Assyrians are a very big linchpin in this entire thing in our understanding of ancient civilizations, right? So getting into it, though, we're going to continue that geography aspect of Assyria, right? The geography of Assyria is going to become a major player in the growth of their culture. Now, the big thing about it in general is when you're talking about Assyria, they are at the base of a very, very big, important mountain range, right? The land is flat in front of them, and they had mountains behind them, right? They were actually located at the base of the Zagros Mountains, spelled Z-A-G-R-O-S, at the base of the Zagros Mountains, and their city-state faced forward onto large, flat terrain, right? So it was mountain, and then where their city was, and then flat in front of them, right? Now, the big thing about it is, with mountains at their back and flat terrain in front of them, exposing most of their early settlements, this made them very easy to be attacked, right? He didn't have a region to run away, and so this is going to actually build up Assyria as a very militaristic people, right? Now, we're getting into that here in a second, okay? We're going to really analyze Assyria from a militaristic standpoint. We're going to talk about the Persians after that and how they weren't nearly as militaristic and how they were much more about,
like being kind and tolerance and like trying to outlaw slavery in their empire. Like the Persians were like, it was kind of nice living in the Persian Empire. It wasn't the best living in the Assyrian Empire unless you were Assyrian, right? Now the land and the resources inside of Assyria was very fertile, right? So they had large scale agriculture. They also had a plentiful amount of stone, right? Huge stone resources that are going to make it so building larger settlements and cities and growing their civilization is going to be much more effective and much faster, which is also going to actually be seen in their art styles as well. But getting into it, here's that cultural effect, right? We're talking about the cultural effect of their geography. As you can see, this is an Assyrian piece of art. It is a man riding horseback, firing a bow and arrow in the pitch of war, right? Or no, actually, this is on a hunt, right? The hunt is what he's on because you can see the two dogs in front of him as well. The big thing about it, though, is Assyrians are going to value things like war and the hunt and things like that. And this is going to be their religion that they believed in. And they actually believed in kind of an amalgamated form of like Mesopotamian gods and stuff like that. They also believed in like a theocratic system with a divine right to rule. And this is actually their main god giving or blessing the ruling authority on to the actual Assyrian like king up front. And look what he's got in his hand. A bow and an arrow, right? A weapon in the hand of an Assyrian ruler. It's a very important concept that you understand that the Assyrians were very militaristic, right? Art really shows us that, and Assyrians made a ton of it, right? And as you can tell, with those stone resources, most often their art was carved into stone. It was known as recessive carving, where they would literally chisel away and leave other elevated parts of the art popping out of the front, right? So these stone resources are really going to help them create art and civilization and things like that. And the Assyrians are going to also excel in working with bronze because it was very plentiful as well. Stone resources typically bring mineral resources with them as well. And if you have mineral resources, you probably have access to certain metals like copper and tin, which is what bronze is made from, right? Bronze is actually made from the mixture of copper and tin together, and the Assyrians became master workers of this, right? They're also going to have a writing system, but the interesting thing about Assyrian writing is that we don't even really know how to translate it very well, and it was actually a merging of two different styles. It was Akkadian and Achaemenian writing, so it was like two different peoples that they took over, and they actually kind of merged these two writings together. It was very close to cuneiform, but again, the Assyrians' writing is not what we're worried about because we talked about cuneiform, hieroglyphics, phonetic alphabets with the Phoenicians and stuff like that. The Assyrians are going to use a developed form of cuneiform, so that's all you need to really worry about, right? But looking at all their art, as you can see, the stone resources were plentiful and greatly influenced their art, and so many scenes of artworks from Assyria demonstrate either war, like this one right here. These are men riding in on a chariot because the very first people to develop and use chariots were the Assyrians, and y'all know what a chariot is, right? Like you're sitting in a bucket, it doesn't have a back seat or whatever, and it's got wheels on it, and like the and you're like actually just like hitting a horse, like not hitting a horse, but like you're actually pushing the horse forward, and it was a vehicle of war, right? And this right here demonstrates men riding in a chariot, firing bows and arrows, and men in the back with spears, right? Because they're very warlike people. Or the hunt was another really big thing that was very popular in Assyrian art as well. This right here demonstrates a man hunting or killing a lion, and as you can see, their art's pretty gruesome. The arrow is in the lion's head, and this dude is legit just like choking this lion to death. It's absolutely wild, okay? Now, getting into it, though, Assyrian art and culture is very expansive, and as they began to take over people, they began to suck different perspectives into their art as well. This is a piece of Assyrian art that demonstrates some Egyptian ideologies, right? They're going to try and assimilate these people. This is another one of the hunt, and they're hunting an ostrich right there. But also, they began to expand greatly, and their culture is going to, as you can tell, impact other people, right? Because the Assyrians are out there taking over other civilizations. They're taking over the Israelites. They're taking over the Egyptians. They're taking over the Babylonians. They're taking over all these other groups. And so what's going on in this sense is you're seeing the fact that, wait a minute, the Assyrians are impressing their culture onto others. So what does that tell about Assyrians? It demonstrates to us that Assyrian policy about conquering and movement and military is going to be very important in this concept, right? Assyrian policies are usually dictated by how they use their military to spread very quickly, right? Assyrians would legitimately try to use their large military to expand over the Fertile Crescent area as fast as possible. Now, what would they do with conquered peoples, right? Would they let them stay in the area that they conquered? Like, for example, let's say hypothetically that, I don't know, Mr. Medrano is a Babylonian, and here come the Assyrians, right? And the Assyrians take over where, like, Mr. Medrano is from. Are they going to let him stay there with the people that he actually knows really well? Or are they going to disperse them throughout the empire? they're actually going to spread them out. This is what happened to the Jewish people, right? The diaspora of the Jewish people was caused by that Assyrian idea of moving people throughout the empire to avoid nationalism, pride in your people, and the possibility of a revolt, right? Another big tactic that they would use, which is why I have tactics right here, is that the big goal, as you can tell, is that the Assyrians want to kind of like destroy your sense of pride in your people by breaking you all up and moving you all over the place, okay? So keeping you away from people that know how to speak your language and understand your plight and try to revolt against the Assyrians. And the other big thing that they're going to do as well is they're going to kind of gruesomely embarrass people, all right? So they had violent forms of execution, also violent forms of like counting the dead bodies that they had slain in war and things like that. And you can see that right here. They're literally keeping track of the number of people they killed in a battle by counting the severed heads of their fallen enemies, right? This is like the grossest game of Jenga that has ever existed ever. And going forward, their expansion is going to be rapid, right? And they're going to keep employing these tactics onto other people. Assyria expanded using that really strong military force, and they kept over those territories using very forceful methods. Between 850 and 650 BC, Assyria is going to successfully defeat or take over the land that is now modern-day Syria, Palestine, Babylon, Egypt, the Hebrews, and they're even going to take over some of those early Phoenician trade cities, like the ones like over towards Lebanon, right? And in this process, they're going to use a very sophisticated military that has multiple units, okay? For example, this is an Assyrian shieldman, right, who actually would like hold the shield in front of archers while archers would then fire over top of it. This right here is an Assyrian spearman who actually would be a very specific role in their army and in charge of using that specific weapon, right? Now, getting into it, though, their military strategy is going to be very important because the army would do anything it could using these specific, like, these military units and stuff like that. If a city had a really large wall in front of it, they would draw in front of it a battering ram to destroy that wall and break it down. If the Assyrians had a wall that couldn't be broken down, if they were like came up on a city that had a wall so thick they couldn't break it down, they would throw ladder troops up on the side, and men like Assyrians would climb up ladders and jump over the wall and invade the city, right? If the Assyrians also used these people called sappers to dig underneath the wall to compromise its integrity and try to bring the entire thing down, right? Which is wild. And they would make examples out of the conquered people by doing things like killing them in public. Oh, this right here is actually, you can see like all these different tactics, right? That right there is a huge battering ram up front, massive groups of shieldmen and archers right here. These are sappers right here digging underneath the wall itself to invade the city. And the other thing that they would do as well is, like I said, that's a battering ram right there, Assyrian one. They would like make examples out of the fallen people. And they would actually like, this for example is when they took over a Jewish village. As you can see with these people right here, they would like impale them on posts and put them outside of the villages so people knew what would happen to them if you tried to mess with the Assyrians. Like, this is super screwed up when you think about it in general, right? They would also do things like this, like a concept called flaying people alive. Flaying is spelled F-L-A-Y-I-N-G. And I'll tell you what that is in class. Don't let me forget, all right? Be like, Mr. Terry, what's flaying, right? So now the other big thing about it, though, is while they're killing all these people in these horrific ways, making examples of them and trying to destroy that national sense of pride and prevent rebellions from ever popping up in their empire, they were also huge nerds about it, and they also invented the world's very first libraries, right? Like, so they actually would take materials of intelligence from people that they had taken over and shove them all into one building to make the very world's first libraries. Like, that's so funny in a way. Like, in a nutshell, it's like, wow, you guys are huge jerks, but you're really big on saving information, right? So, like, now, that right there is actually an old Assyrian library. I believe that's from Nineveh, and it's actually located in the British Museum. So now, getting into it, though, as well, as we'll talk more about that as well, but the Assyrian military strategy was so sophisticated that there was an account of one city that they took over, and it's modeled in this etching right here. There's one city that they took over was actually on an island in the middle of a large body of water, and apparently that city thought that they were safe from the Assyrians because the Assyrians were not going to be able to launch enough boats and get over there and destroy them. So what the Assyrians did, according to legend, is that they went into the woods, killed a bunch of animals, and then made life jackets out of the skin of those animals, and then used them to paddle over and then destroy that city. That's crazy, right? So, like, now as they got into these conquered territories, they would use a very organized bureaucratic system to actually conquer, or actually keep those people conquered under their fist, right? Assyrian kings would pick like governors for dependent territories that supported the rulers and sided with Assyria, and Assyria protected those dependent territories from outside invaders, right? Now, mainly just because they were trying to farm or take any resources they could from these different areas, and many conquered people were forced into the military and then also into slave labor. Now, what is this going to help lead to, though? That's exactly right, Olivia. You're exactly right. She's like, people aren't going to like these people very much, Mr. Terry. And I'm like, I know, Olivia. You're so dead on the money. They're not going to like the Assyrians very much. And this might lead to a rebellion or a revolt. The more people you take over, the more people don't like you. The more people that you make head-stack Jenga games out of, the more people don't like you. The more people you're putting on sticks outside of their village, the more people don't like you. Eventually, those people are going to all get together, and they're going to have a massive revolt. And that's exactly what happened to the Assyrians. The Assyrians ended up falling after about 200 years, a very short-lived major military empire, because they made too many enemies, right? They were destroyed by a huge group of rebelling cultures that all attacked at the same time. Literally, the Babylonians were the biggest ones, and they were called the Neo Babylonians, and they were led by our guy, Nebuchadnezzar, the man who moved the world for the woman that he loved, showed up with a huge army in the south towards Babylon and rebelled. The Egyptians rebelled. People in the northern areas of the Fertile Crescent rebelled. Former Sumerians rebelled, and they all rebelled so big that they couldn't spread the army out far enough to stop these rebellions. The Neo-Babylonians, though, are only going to rule for about 100 years. Nebuchadnezzar's military and entire prowess only existed to be the big city-state in the Fertile Crescent area for about 100 years. And then shows up one of the most efficient, insanely intense, most egalitarian, most fair, most positive groups of people that's ever come in. But Hollywood movies write them as the bad guys, right? So it's a very interesting little concept. We're now moving into the Persian Empire, right? Now notice really quickly, Haley Ruther, I changed the color a little bit. It's like a light blue background now with this big blue thing around it. So we're now moving over into the Persians, right? So the Assyrians, as you can tell, had very aggressive tactics to take over large amounts of land and stuff like that. Their culture dictated this mainly because of that mountainous terrain behind them, and it was very flat and exposed in front, so they had a huge military. They used it to take over everybody, and they were big jerks about it, and they made libraries. But the thing about it, though, is we're now moving into the Persian Empire, which is going to be distinctly different from any other one that we've talked about up to this point, right? The Persians, first of all, where are they from? Where are they coming from? If the Assyrians are from the northern area of the Fertile Crescent near what is modern-day Syria, where are the actual Persians coming from? They're from ancient Iran, right? So if you look at these areas right around here, they're actually from these two distinct city-states right in there, near Elam, and this area right here is what actually is labeled as Persia, right? This area, what is known, this city is going to become majorly important later on. It's called Persepolis, and we'll talk about that when we actually get further on in the flip, right? If I actually get to it. I might cut it off a little bit early. I think we'll still have time to play a review game and stuff like that in class, which I'm very excited about. So, also, we believe that they are born out of ancient Iran. We believe the Persians are the ancient Iranians, right? Now, being very important to discuss their distinct, stark differences between the Assyrians fell very quickly because they were so mean. The Persians lasted so long because they were so smart and kind. Now, create this or understand this because they come to dominance following the fall of the Assyrians. The Assyrians kind of crumble, the Neo Babylonians come into power, but it was only 100 years later, and the Persians took over basically all of the Fertile Crescent. You see all this light brown right here? That's the Persian Empire.
Wow. 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 Wow.
I know, right? It's huge. It's like the size of the continental United States. How would it be possible that an empire from 2,000 years ago could take over a land that big and not crumble into bits and pieces? Well, it has a lot to do with their culture. And a lot of it has to do with this guy, okay? One of their first and most important major leaders. And his name is Cyrus the Great, right? Cyrus the Great being the very first man to come along and consolidate the Persian territories together and create a very efficient, bureaucratic ruling empire with a new cultural idea. Not to go in and take people over and destroy them, but to go in and use tolerance to rule over them, right? He is the most famed leader of the Persian Empire. And he's so famous, in fact, that Cyrus the Great is brought up in the Bible. The dude is in the Bible. He's that famous, right? Because literally when he came in, he promoted the concept, using a genius military mind, promoted the concept of tolerance, right? When he would take somebody over, every time Cyrus and his armies would take over a city or a village or a place, he would not disperse them. He would not destroy them violently. He would give them the option to join the Persian Empire willingly. He would be like, we're coming in. We're going to claim this land. Our military is very large. You don't have to fight us. If you just come into the empire and pay your taxes, we will actually treat you kindly. And you can keep your culture and your ideas and your religion and all of your concepts. Just pay your taxes and pledge loyalty to the empire. What a nice guy. Give me a second. We got to wait for the announcements. Oh, sorry about that quick environment change. I ran out of time at school today, so I got to finish up these flips when I'm at my house, right? But Pierre says hello, and he loves talking about ancient Persia, doesn't he? Yes, he does. And the big thing about it, though, in general, is that Pierre and I are here to tell you how great Cyrus the Great really was, right? That concept of tolerance that he's promoting is going to be a massive thing that is going to help us kind of like compare and contrast the major differences between the Persians and the Assyrians, right? The Assyrians were super intense and like diaspora the Jewish people, and like we're really, really mean and made examples of people, and we're also just so like carnal and like biting me like Pierre is and stuff like that. Whereas I am like the Persians, and I am tolerant of Pierre's views and understandings of the world, and I understand that he's just a baby. So the big thing about it, though, is Cyrus was such a prominent figure and such a great figure in general that literally they still celebrate a very important day. They have Cyrus the Great Day in Iran to this day, and they literally have cakes, and they make tombs up, or they make cakes about him, and like this is the Cyrus cylinder that was actually found in one of his tombs, and it has some of the old school Persian writing on it. And the other cool thing about it as well is they make cakes of Cyrus's tomb, right? Like, so literally Cyrus's tomb is actually in Persepolis in Iran, in one of the capital city areas, and he's considered such a famous figure that he's in the Old Testament of the Bible. Like, the Jewish people look on him as one of the anointed ones by God, because after he took over what used to be Israel, gotta give daps to Cyrus, right? Cyrus literally then allowed the Jewish people to return to Israel and Canaan, allowed them to have their land back and stuff like that. And he was like, look, you can do whatever you want, just pay your taxes and pledge allegiance to the Persian Empire deal. And then he goes off and he's trying to end slavery in the empire and stuff like that and heavily discourage it. Like, he's such a famous figure in general that when Alexander the Great destroyed Persepolis and burned it to the ground, he literally said, we can destroy everything, but don't touch the tomb of Cyrus the Great, right? That's how much of a fantastic figure Cyrus the Great actually was. How sick is that? That's awesome. And then Cyrus the Great also, it's very important to talk about his faith, all right? So like the biggest thing about it is Cyrus the Great didn't invent this religion, but this religion is really, really important when you're discussing the growth of the Persian Empire, because the Persians are going to have a very unique religion, very different from everybody else, and it's going to be known as Zoroastrianism, right? So Zoroastrianism is really important to talk about because all this like concept of monotheism wasn't a very new or exclusive thing just to the Jewish people, because Zoroastrianism is a monotheistic faith, right? They literally came up with a concept in Persia of a monotheistic faith, and this preceded Islam, it preceded Christianity, and it's a very important faith and concept because actually it does have traits that have influenced modern-day religions as well, right? It being a monotheistic religion, it was the very first religion to come up with the concept of a heaven or a place of paradise. Hell, a place of punishment, angels and demons existed in Zoroastrianism as well. This, for example, right here is supposed to be the personification of a soul in Zoroastrianism. So we see a lot of the early monotheistic concepts that are outlined in things like Christianity and Islam that are actually also in ancient Zoroastrianism, which was present in the Persian Empire, and Cyrus the Great himself was actually a Zoroastrian. And it's named after the prophet of the faith, right? This guy named Zoroaster was supposed to be the prophet of Zoroastrianism and discussed the different concepts of this one true God that they believed in, known as Ahura Mazda, which is supposed to be the all-knowing, all-loving, all-positive God of the Persian people and faith, right? And then they also believed that there was like a force of evil, almost like the devil exists in Christianity and also in the Old Testament Judaic Bibles and stuff like that. The big thing about it is they believed that this devil or whatever, or like this devil or this evil force was called Ahriman, right? And like that is where a big concept of some of these early monotheistic faiths are going to take this concept of like the duality between good and evil from, right? And this may have influenced some of the ideas and values of other faiths early on. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cut this off right here. We're then going to actually review a little bit in class, and then we're also going to finish up a little bit of stuff about Persia, and then we're going to play a review game, right? We're going to play a review game. We're going to see who the smartest one in the room is. Work on your study guide. Do really good. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy yourself, all right? You have a good one. Say bye, Pierre. All right?